Yeah, what I would just like to say is, I don't know if I mean, I grew up in the '70s, and one of the most famous cartoons back in the '70s was something called Schoolhouse Rock. I don't know if you know about that or your audience knows about it,
I remember
but
it. Yeah.
but one of the things from Schoolhouse Rock they said was, which resonates true, at least in my experience, is that knowledge is power. The problem with a lot of people, not just in America, but around the world, is they don't have the knowledge of what's going on. Because I think if they did, I think it was Henry Ford that said, if people understood lending and banking institutions and the state of our finances in this country, there'd be a revolution by morning light.
I'm not
If
sure if it was
people,
for it, but I know the quote. But yeah, that's a
yeah,
great.
yeah. And it's a completely paraphrased quote, but the point is, if we have knowledge and we can operate off that knowledge and stay hooked and connected and anchored to that knowledge, then we won't be swayed by emotions. What I always tell people is politics and politicians and politics in general is nothing more, nothing less than the clever and deceptive art of using euphemisms, lies, emotionalism, and fear mongering in order to dupe average people into accepting and even demanding the chains of their own enslavement. Because for the oligarchs, it's not enough that you accept the chains of your own enslavement. They want you to beg for it. They
Right.
want you to go to, that's why I call the voting box the slave suggestion box, because basically all you're doing is, I want this plantation owner to take my money. I don't want this plantation owner. I want this plantation owner to start the wars. I don't want Team Blue to start the wars.
Big
If we,
plantation.
yeah, if we can plant seeds of truth and freedom and logic in people's mind and get them to operate on that level instead of on the level of emotion and feelings, we can literally change this world, because knowledge is power. And I'll give you an example. I was out at the march. I call it March Against Our Rights. They call it March for Our Lives. They had a March for Our Lives demonstration after what happened at Parkland. I'm not going to mention what happened at Parkland, but you know.
Yeah.
But after Parkland, they had March for Our Lives. They had all these school kids, and there was a million people there. Had to be, just tons of people filled the streets. And me and my girlfriend went out there to conduct some interviews. I would ask them, okay, because March for Our Lives is, we want the government to take your guns. We are against gun violence, which is a complete misnomer. There's no such thing as gun violence. There's people who do violence by using a tool called a gun. We don't call it hammer violence. We don't call it knife violence, but they're going to call it gun violence. Why? Because they have an agenda, and their agenda is to take the private property of peaceful, I almost said citizens, peaceful people. They want to take the private property like an AR-15 or an AK-47. These people haven't harmed anybody, but they did the March for Our Rights, or March Against Our Rights people, want the government to come in and, against your will and without your consent, steal your property. So I asked these people on the street, I said, are you generally one who trusts government? And they're like, 100% of the time, they're like, no, we don't trust government. And I would ask a couple questions in between. Do you think people should own AK-47s and AR-15s? No, not at all. Okay, so do you think that they should, that the government should take those guns? And they're like, yes, absolutely. And then they stop mid-sentence. It's like, wait a second, I just hung myself, because I just basically said that I want an entity that I don't trust to take away private property from other people. And you could see it solidified. It clicked right there. They came face to face with their own cognitive dissonance, where they were trying to hold two mutually exclusive and diametrically opposed ideals in their minds at the same time. And if you don't deal with it with cognitive dissonance, it will literally drive you crazy. So people, if you come at them with knowledge, if you come at them with rationality and logic, and you do it in a calm manner, you don't have to get excited about it. It's like, hey, let me just ask you a couple questions. I'm not for Trump. I'm not for Obama. I'm not Democrat or Republican. I just want to find out what you think, what you feel. And I think when a person comes to the conclusion that, hey, what I'm believing is absolute garbage, maybe then and only then can we change the world.